Well, it's snakes and talking donkeys in chapter 21 and 22 in Numbers. We'll leave the talking donkey till next time and we'll look at Balaam and Balak as one unit, chapters 22 to 24. Next time we look at Numbers, but chapter 21, the snakes and the judgment. Let's look at that. There is more grumbling yet again. This is the theme. The thing that keeps happening is grumbling in the desert, and they are and God this time brings judgment. He brings snakes, serpents. Why snakes and serpents? What do they remind us of? They remind us of what happened in the garden, the presence of evil there from the beginning. Satan allowed, permitted, as we've been seeing in the book of Job, to bring judgment and suffering, and that's what happens here. The people are given over to evil powers in the snakes, and judgment comes through them. But with that judgment that comes in the venomous serpents that God permits, then comes salvation, a snake on a pole. We sinned, pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us. Moses prays, God says, make a snake and put it on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. So they do that, and anyone who looks and has been bitten and looks lives. Now what's going on here then? Well, Jesus takes up the snakes aren't mentioned again in Numbers. There's one more reference later in the Old Testament to the bronze serpent, which actually has been turned into an idol, but it doesn't need to be. Jesus mentions it in John chapter 3, famous verses, chapter 3 verse 14. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So Jesus sees this episode with the snakes and the snake on the pole as an illustration of a couple of different things. First, of faith. So we often think of faith as one of those things where we say, I wish I had more faith, and we think of it as a sort of substance you can have more of, and she's got more faith than I have. But no, that isn't really what faith is. Faith is about looking to what's been provided for us, looking to Jesus, looking here to the snake on the pole. In other words, if you're dying of a snake bite, don't try and bargain, don't try and suck out the venom, don't try and solve the problem yourself, but look to the snake. It's a beautiful picture of faith, because if you're dying of a snake bite, you're on the ground, you're in the dust, and then the snake on the pole is lifted up, and all you have to do is look up to the snake and be saved. And that's a picture of faith for us. Look to Jesus on the cross. Don't try and solve the problem of your sin yourself. Don't try and bargain. Don't try and reason. Don't try and pay back. Don't try and pay for your sin yourself. Look to the one who's paid for you. Look to him on the cross. Jesus is saying the Son of Man is going to be lifted up for you, Nicodemus, in John chapter 3. So that is one thing, a picture of faith. But then also, who is on the pole? What is on the pole? It's just striking to reflect on that. The serpents are causing the judgment, but then it's a bronze serpent on the pole. It's kind of an emblem of the judgment that they are suffering, then ends up on the pole, as if dead, as if judged, turned to bronze on the pole. And then when we come to John chapter 3, what is on the pole? What is on the cross? What is going to be lifted up? Well, it's Jesus. It's Jesus. Isn't that striking? It's him on the pole. It's him on the cross. You see, it is God who judges. It's God who brings judgment on his people, but it's also God who saves. And it's God who saves through coming and stepping into the world as a man and being judged himself. Do you see? Like the snake is on the pole is a symbol of the judgment itself. So the cross is the place of judgment, and we look there to be saved from the judgment we deserve, to see the one who was judged in our place. So as we battle on in the journey, as we struggle with our sin, as we deal with the effects of God's giving us over in our fallen world, giving human beings over to the judgment we deserve, even here and now. Not, as we've seen before, not that coronavirus or specific circumstances are a specific judgment for an individual, but that the world generally is under judgment, and the things that we suffer now are symptoms of that. Well, as we battle on through the Christian life now, let's look to the one who has been judged in our place, who has been lifted up for us. Let's look to him and be saved.